Welcome to our deep dive today. Let's kick things off by defining thought. It can be an idea or opinion we create in our minds, or one that just pops up suddenly. And you've given us some fascinating excerpts to work with today from the science fiction novel Thought Bubbles. It imagines a world where everyone's thoughts are visible, like glowing bubbles above their heads. No more secrets, just total transparency. Makes you wonder about the implications of that. Such radical honesty laid bare for all to see.
It's definitely a fascinating premise. The book sets up this world where the thought bubble technology is initially seen as this tool for honesty and unity. Like, imagine, no more deception, no more misunderstandings, a world where everything from relationships to business deals are built on trust and genuine intentions. Sounds pretty utopian at first glance, right?
It does. But like the saying goes, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it and then regret it. So what happens when everyone's thoughts are out in the open like that?
Well, that's where the story takes a turn. The book explores what happens when this seemingly perfect society starts to unravel a bit.
Cracks in the facade.
Exactly. Imagine the pressure of constantly monitoring your thoughts, knowing everyone around you can see them. Privacy becomes a thing of the past.
Gone.
Relationships become strained because every fleeting doubt or negative thought is right there on display. It's like a recipe for social anxiety on a massive scale.
Makes you think twice about wanting to know what everyone's really thinking, huh?
Right. And to cope with this new reality, people start attending these thought control classes. It's like etiquette training, but for your mind. They learn to police their thoughts, keep everything positive and acceptable.
So even if you're having a bad day, you have to pretend everything's fine.
Pretty much. And this leads to this culture that's obsessed with forced politeness and performative civility.
Always walking on eggshells.
Yeah. Afraid to let your true thoughts slip out. Which ultimately makes it even harder to form genuine connections.
It's ironic, right? They're aiming for transparency and they get isolation instead.
It's one of the central tensions the book explores. And that's where I meet Alex Harper. She's this young woman who is just exhausted by this constant exposure. She longs for privacy, a sentiment I'm sure many can relate to, even without thought bubbles.
Yeah, I think in our own world, social media pushes us in that direction too, to present this perfect, curated version of ourselves.
Exactly. So the book taps into these anxieties we already have about privacy and authenticity in this digital age. And it takes them to the extreme.
What about in the workplace? Does the book explore that?
It does. It dives into the corporate world, where thought bubbles are used for both empowerment and control. Imagine your boss evaluating you not just on your work, but also on your visible thoughts.
Whoa.
Makes performance reviews a whole lot more intense.
And raises a ton of ethical questions.
Definitely. And that brings us to Marcus Diaz. He's a sales executive who thrives in this environment. He masters what the book calls public thinking, projecting this image of professionalism and positivity, even when he doesn't actually feel it. This skill brings him a lot of success.
But it sounds like he's living a lie.
That's the dilemma he faces. He stumbles upon the ability to project different thoughts than what he actually feels. Initially, it's an accident, but this skill gives him an edge in his career.
But at what cost, right?
Exactly. He starts to question the authenticity of his success and the ethical implications of his actions.
I'm starting to see why you called this book thought-provoking.
Just wait, it gets even more complicated. And then there's Layla Patel. She's an academic who makes a similar discovery. During a high-pressure presentation, she learns to control her thought bubbles, to mask her anxiety. So on the surface, she appears calm and collected, but inside, she's battling this fear. It's like she's created this perfect facade.
So it's another case of outward success masking inner turmoil.
Exactly. But unlike Marcus, Layla's ability leads to isolation. She hides her true self, afraid of what will happen if anyone discovers her secret.
So this power, this control over their thoughts, it becomes both a blessing and a curse for them.
That's a great way to put it. And it raises another unsettling question. If one person can do this, can others? The possibility introduces this element of paranoia into society. Who can you truly trust when anyone could be hiding their real thoughts?
It makes the whole concept of transparency feel a lot more complicated.
Definitely. And that brings us to Darren McBride. He's an activist who despises the thought bubble system. He sees it as a tool for conformity, a way to stifle individuality and dissent. So for him, the ability to control his thoughts, it becomes an act of rebellion.
It's interesting how the same ability can be used in such different ways, depending on the person's motivation.
Exactly. And as the story unfolds, these characters' paths begin to intersect.
So we have Alex longing for privacy, Marcus grappling with the ethics of his success. Layla hiding her true self out of fear. And Darren using his ability to rebel. What happens when they all collide?
Well, they discover they're not alone. They find each other. And in their shared secret, they find a sense of camaraderie, a connection in this increasingly isolating world.
It's like they form their own secret society.
In a way, they have. And they start to experiment together, testing the boundaries of their abilities. They practice what the book calls mirroring, projecting desired thoughts to influence others.
So they're not just hiding their own thoughts. They're trying to manipulate others.
For some, it's a form of self-preservation. For others, it's about gaining an advantage. And for some, like Darren, it's about rebellion. But as they push the limits, the foundation of this transparent society starts to crumble.
Cracks in the facade. Again.
Bigger cracks this time. Rumors spread about people who can mask their true thoughts. The system designed to eliminate deception now breeds suspicion and paranoia.
It's like the whole thing is backfiring.
And then things escalate. Darren, fueled by his rebellious spirit, gets carried away during a protest and accidentally reveals his ability.
Oh, no.
The media goes into a frenzy. He's labeled a threat to society, a dangerous anomaly in a world that demands conformity.
So the system's worst nightmare has come true.
Exactly, and the government reacts accordingly, fearful and desperate to regain control. They implement even stricter policies. Surveillance measures ramp up. The thought bubbles, once symbols of unity, become tools of monitoring and control.
It's a chilling reminder of how easily things can shift, from transparency to tyranny.
It's one of the book's most powerful warnings.
So what happens to Darren and the rest of the group?
Darren's exposure fractures the group. Each member has to confront the consequences and make difficult choices. Some retreat into the shadows, hoping to avoid detection. Others wrestle with their conscience, questioning the price of their freedom.
What about Alex, the young woman who just wanted some privacy?
Alex sees the devastating impact of the government's crackdown. Innocent people are caught in the crossfire. Fear and suspicion permeate society, and it weighs heavily on her.
It's a turning point for her, isn't it?
It is. She realizes that silence is no longer an option. She has to take action.
But what can she do?
She reaches out to Marcus and Layla. Despite their fears and past disagreements, they recognize the need to work together.
So they reunite.
They do, and they decide to use their abilities, not for personal gain, not even for outright rebellion, but for something more subtle.
What do they have in mind?
They decide to try and influence society, to nudge people towards compassion and empathy. They know a direct confrontation with the government would be futile, so they choose a different path, a path of subtle manipulation.
So they're still using their powers to influence thoughts, but for a different purpose now.
Exactly. They target people in positions of power, subtly influencing their thoughts and actions, hoping to steer them towards more humane policies. They also work to spread messages of hope and unity.
It's like they're fighting the system from within.
That's a good way to put it.
But it still sounds incredibly risky.
It is, but they're determined to make a difference.
So does it work?
Their actions start to have an impact. Slowly, cracks appear in the government's facade of control. People start to question the system. They see the flaws in its logic and yearn for something more.
So there's hope.
There is. Their efforts spark a resistance movement. It starts small, but it gradually gains momentum.
This is incredible. It's like watching a tiny seed grow into a mighty tree.
It's a testament to the power of even the smallest acts of resistance and the enduring human desire for freedom and autonomy. And ultimately, their actions lead to some real change. The government, facing this mounting pressure, recognizes that its grip on society is slipping, and they're forced to make concessions.
Wow, so they actually win in the end.
In a way, yes. The laws mandating absolute transparency, they're revised, and a greater appreciation for privacy and individual expression starts to emerge.
It's a hopeful ending, for sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't come easy.
Not at all. The book leaves us with this sense of cautious optimism. Like the fight for freedom and autonomy, it's never truly over, but it's a fight worth having.
This whole deep dive into thought bubbles has been fascinating. We started with a simple definition of thought and ended up exploring this world where thoughts are visible. It really makes you think about the balance between transparency and privacy.
And about the unintended consequences of technology. It's interesting how this fictional scenario reflects anxieties we already have in our own society. The rise of social media, the increasing use of surveillance technologies, the pressure to present a certain image online, it all ties into these themes.
Yeah, even without thought bubbles, it feels like the lines between our inner and outer selves are blurring.
Exactly. And that's what makes the book so relevant. It forces us to confront these questions about what it means to be authentic in a world where technology can capture and reveal so much about who we are.
And what about the desire for privacy? Does that become a thing of the past?
That's one of the big questions the book leaves us with. It doesn't offer easy answers, but it reminds us that even in a world of radical transparency, the human spirit can find ways to resist control and reclaim its freedom.
That's a powerful message.
It is. It's a story about the importance of individual expression, the power of collective action, and the enduring human desire for connection, even in the face of forces that try to pull us apart.
It's given me a lot to think about, that's for sure. Thank you for guiding us through this.
My pleasure. These are the kinds of conversations I love to have.
And to you listening. We hope this deep dive into thought bubbles has sparked some interesting thoughts and questions for you as well. How do you see these themes of transparency, privacy, and control playing out in our own world? And what does authenticity mean to you? In this age of ever-evolving technology, we encourage you to keep thinking deeply. Until next time.